This is Megan Merchant, and thank you for joining me for the next few minutes where we're going to talk about proposing wellness during COVID. I have been fortunate to be a dance, fitness, and health educator for all types of high-risk populations in the last 20 years. People expecting families, people who have come out of surgery or are dealing with chronic illnesses and issues, including college students who we don't often think about, but are becoming independent in the world for the first time. In this talk, we're going to look at your unique needs during this COVID pandemic. We're going to assess the different areas in your life that it's impacting and the size and scale or how much adaptation and change is being required of you because of COVID. Then I'm going to give you 3 behavior change strategies in the areas of your environment, pre-planning, and your relationships so that you end with confident strategies that increase your wellness. So let's get going. Grab a piece of paper and know that stress is anything that causes change. Now, per public health guidelines, at the bare minimum, what you have been asked to do to change is wash your hands often, maintain distance from other people, and wear face coverings. But I know, and you know, that it is so much more than this list at the personal, individual, and family level. So in this moment, think about your home, your work, your school, your relationships, your community, and write down 3 things that have really caused an impact for you. We call this wellness dimensions when we compartmentalize our life and break things down into home, work, school, or even looking at our specific thoughts, our feelings, our actions. Even people's spiritual dimensions are being challenged and questioned during this time. Now I'm going to take one example, because what we're going to do is, even though we're triggered, we're going to figure out a way to make it better and make you more well. So I have an example here of someone who mentioned altered access to food. The way they used to obtain food is vastly different. So when you have written down one of your triggers, define it more clearly. This person says, I only eat at restaurants. Now they're closed. So we're going to take that specific trigger and break it down into its actual adaptations enforced on you. Is this temporary or permanent? Is this a real or perceived threat? And is this life-altering or life-threatening? Let's say, for example, the restaurants are closed, it's your only access to food, and it's not opening again. That's very real, possibly permanent, and life-threatening. But say restaurants are one choice among many. You have some food storage, you have great neighbors, you have access to grocery stores. That makes it just more life-altering, more temporary, and a little bit more of a perceived threat, which can automatically lighten. All right, now let's get into behavior change, because obviously the further it is on that threatening, permanent, scary side, we want to have ways that we can influence our environment. So under environment, our environment sustains our body. When our body is sustained, our mind can think clearly and our heart can function very well. So when you're in your environment, I want you to think about preserving and protecting your sleep, having a routine where you relax into the night, having a place dedicated to going to sleep, and the same routine or time of waking up every day. Now, because this person mentioned nutrition and access to food, the 3 things for them to think about in shaping their environment is, how do I make access easier? Which means you may have to just explore more resources, create spaces in your home for more food storage. And if you've never prepared food, or that's not a comfort for you, which may be why you're going to a restaurant, how can you design your food space to make food preparation easier for you? A quick story: once I was really frustrated in my house because I didn't have enough cutting boards. It sounds ridiculous, but at Walmart I can get a cutting board for $1, and I found I prepared food a lot more if one got dirty cutting meat and cheese, that I could pull out another one to do fruits and veggies. It sounds silly, but it made a huge impact and stress. And then quality is having whole food rather than processed. If you have a choice, get those things that are higher in nutrient density, higher in water content, and things that are processed, refined, tend to be empty, tend to be dry, and will not sustain you. All right, now looking at the next step, if you've assessed your environment, we can look at pre-planning and making a list of all the things you can take action on. Not only is it what you need to do, but when are you going to do it and where are you going to do it? We call this defining our problem strategies. And you've probably always heard people say, make a to-do list, but defining that when and where is going to make your cravings go down, your need for motivation to be much, much lower, and everything will be easier. Not only that, but when you have a to-do list, you can prioritize it. So it's much easier to see what's the easiest, fastest thing I can do that's going to have the highest impact. Do those things on your list first. If you have a stressor you've written on your list, perhaps the death of a loved one, and it feels as though there's no specific action or task you can take for that, we also have emotional strategies. So I put this little note here because we all have times where we just can't even think straight enough to make a list. That's when you need to use deep breathing, meditation, listen to your favorite song, dance. Dance was created throughout history as a means of emotionally connecting us and helping us when we didn't quite have the action task figured out. So don't forget, there's always emotional strategies. And then the last one, of course, is relationships. In terms of access to food or the eating trigger on your list, we are being challenged to assess our safety anytime we come close to anyone that we may have normally been close to. That causes us to be selective, think if our interaction is going to be supportive, and how do we be most informed in that interaction. I love this picture because to me, it represents someone who not only has altered food access because of a restaurant closure, but maybe they worked at that restaurant. Their employment is impacted, their finances are impacted, and that's hitting their stress on a whole other level. Well, perhaps the restaurant figured out how to modify. Maybe they're having a small staff and very specific people do delivery orders in a safe manner with the distancing and protective gear. If you were to obtain food from this person, you are really elevating their health. You are getting both of your needs met, your interactions are beneficial, and you're following health precautions. Woohoo! So there are relationships out there, even listening to this webinar right now, thank you so much, to increase your health and well-being. To summarize this quickly, times are changing. Things keep being asked of us that every day are slightly different. So you can always come back to this video, make a list of your needs, assess how many areas of your life it's impacting, and then how big is the severity really of that stressor, that life-altering or life-threatening. And then use these 3 behavior change strategies. 1, how do you design your environment so that it's just more accessible, comfortable, and high quality? In the pre-planning, if you start to see those actions, write them down, when you're going to take action, where you're going to take action, and what is the highest priority. And then relationships. You can use emotional strategies if you're not feeling like developing a list, or if you really need that social connection and interaction, there are probably new people, new relationships you're going to find and you're going to connect with because of the circumstance. Strategies that increase COVID impact to shift your health toward wellness is probably not something you're thinking about. But I love this picture. It's a woman who's got her protective gear. She has a companion who's a little bit safer during the pandemic than human beings. Maybe she's in a parking lot because she's getting ready to have someone help her put food in her car and not expose other people in a store. And what we start to see is just there's a wealth of options. Now, this video is not intended for our first responders who are going to need your love, support, and intervention on a higher level. This is just designed for the average individual who's at home and they're trying to rework their routines to just help the time pass. And I hope as this time passes, you're going to come out more resilient and stronger than when everything began. I wish you dramatic wellness.